Welcome to the Dental Brief, the world's direct, right-to-the-point podcast produced to get you the information you need to learn and grow your practice. To learn more about our guests and find links to information discussed on our show, visit our website, dentalbrief.com. On to today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dental Brief. Today's guest is going to be a lot of fun for you. We're going to talk about a subject that I've struggled with a lot, and I know a lot of practices do too. So I want to just jump right in and introduce Ryan Vett. Ryan, say good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much, Patrick, for having me.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. Ryan, let's give our audience a little bit about your background and how you got leading up to how you got into the dental industry.
Absolutely. I'm a serial entrepreneur. It really did start with a lemonade stand in the suburbs of Chicago growing up. Keeping the story short, that morphed into a multinational marketing company, which then got me into the software world, done several software startups. And after that, I went to a dental device company that focused on local anesthetics. And that's how I got my foray in dental and got my feet wet in dental. Simultaneously, my wife was going through dental school. So we both got our dental education a little bit different, but at the same time. So that's how I got into dental, and now have the privilege of being actively involved, speaking at a lot of dental meetings when we're having dental meetings, and being just being a part of the industry.
It's an awesome background. You've clearly accomplished a lot. I think also having a spouse that's a dentist kind of gives you some insight to probably some problems. So let's just jump right into the problem. Brian, we were talking a little bit about it before we started recording. What's a big problem that you're seeing in the dental industry right now?
I think one of the biggest problems that we're seeing is this multi-generational conflict and how different generations interact with one another. And a lot of younger generations get frustrated with more mature generations, and a lot of more mature generations just don't understand why the younger generations don't do things the way that they do, that they have always done things. And so there's a lot of generational conflict in hiring and team building and trying to work with a team.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We hear this all the time. And I right now, I think we're going through an area where we have, relative to me, I'm 46 years old. We have relatively young dentists coming into the workplace, and they're working with baby boomers often, right? Sometimes those baby boomers are getting ready to leave or maybe not. Yeah, so fantastic subject. I want to say something real quickly, kind of a rhetorical question that someone asked me is that, the older generations and today's climate, I'm not speaking about in the workplace necessarily, but today's climate, the older generations are blaming the younger generations for all of these things, right? And the younger generations are blaming the older generations for all these things, right?
Right.
Yeah. And of course that carries over how passionate people are about so many things outside of work carries into the workplace. So tell me, what's the answer? So how do we work on, where do we start?
So I think the important thing to remember is that every generation is different and has unique attributes that make them special, right? They have gone through unique experiences. And so part of it is being willing to understand the history and context in which the different generations were raised or are currently being raised. No two generations have had the same experience. If you look at the last really 120 years of the United States, every single, 10 to 20 years has had a very different experience, which is how we group our generations, than the previous. Whether that's technology, political, international policy, the way business was conducted before a lot of mom and pop businesses in the early 1900s to a bunch of larger corporations, different types of jobs from manufacturing to white collar labor. So you just see this progression, and every generation has a different way of parenting style, family dynamics, and it's important just to remember that each one of those is powerful and has an impact on us, but can also cause conflict if we aren't willing to listen and learn to the differences in those generations.
So it sounds like point one, listening and learning, right? Two things. I don't know that any generation has got that, besides maybe my own generation. I don't think any generation has got that wrapped up, right? The listening and learning part, correct?
Right.
Yeah, I say right now, and again, it kind of goes to this kind of the weird political world that we're in today. Younger generations right now seem to be blaming older generations for a lot of things. And I always say, not knowing the answer, I always ask that younger generation, well, what do you think it is that your generation is going to get blamed for in the future? What didn't you have the hindsight to know that you expected older generations to have, right? In defense of younger generations and front of older generations, I say, hey, did you make them sign when you gave them the participation ribbon, did you make them sign a disclosure that, that you could rip on them for the rest of their life when you gave it to them? Because no 5-year-old has ever given another 5-year-old a participation ribbon. Am I right about that?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things is each generation has had different views of authority. And so whether it's a participation trophy in the millennial generation, because they're the ones that are getting all the hate right now, the millennial generation grew up thinking everyone was their friend. They didn't have authority figures that you saw in the previous generation. They didn't have that authoritarian parent. They didn't have those coaches that could literally be more physical than the millennial generation was treated, or literally get punished at school with spankings or other things that just would never fly in today's society. So you look at the course of history and how even authority figures change, and that makes a huge impact on the way in which people are perceived.
Yeah, it's a lot of wisdom right there. Brian, let me ask you this. So steps that you can take right today, and we have a fast show. Steps that let's say an aging or closer to retired dentist can take right now, today, in his office, in his staff, or her office and staff, to help them better work with a younger generation. What's a couple of steps they can take today?
Yeah, I think for older dentists who are more experienced or more mature, the interesting thing is a lot of younger dentists want mentoring. In fact, the millennial generation and even Gen X, they are some of the highest, if you like, according to Pew Research, they want more mentoring than any other previous generation. However, they're the least likely to ask for it. So that's one quick way that you can engage. But the other way is going back through history and trying to figure out what has impacted you and your perspectives. Doesn't mean you have to change your perspectives, because that's a very important part of who you are, but figuring out what has impacted you, and also figuring out the influences that have impacted every generation since. Because if you're 2 generations removed from the current generation coming into the workforce, that means your kids' have been impacted twice over by different factors, environmentally and otherwise. So I strongly encourage you to research and learn a lot about what the previous generations have gone through. I am not a history buff. In fact, I did not like history much at all, especially in school. But as I wrote this book on managing millennials, and I speak a lot on it, we talk about the different generations in the history, because it's really fascinating on how these different factors can influence us.
So I think everyone knows that we can't possibly, in the time that we have, learn everything that we need to learn to be successful. That's not the point. The point is to get the information that people need to focus in on right then and there. So tell me a little bit about your book. Where can we find it? What's the name of it? And tell me what people will take away from that. Yeah,
the book's called Cracking the Millennial Code. It's available wherever books are sold. It's not a dental specific book, but it is a management and leadership book that is very applicable. And whenever I share it with dental offices, in fact, the last time I spoke in person before COVID was to a large group of dentists out in San Francisco. And one of the comments I always hear is, wow, I learned more about my kids or my parenting style through understanding the generations than I did even about leadership in the office. And it's really helped. So there's so many resources beyond that. I would encourage you just to take the time to learn and study the different generations. It's a fun study. It's insightful. And I think you'll learn more about yourself maybe than you'll even learn about the other generations.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that you seem to be a pretty humble individual. Where can they find the book?
You can go to Amazon. You can go to my website at ryanvet.com. Pretty much anywhere. Type in my name that sells books, and it should pop up. Awesome.
One last question for you. Somebody is trying to hire someone, and oftentimes we need to do that. We need to find somebody who is gifted and skilled and has the knowledge, and also can help us with accountability with what we want to change. If somebody were looking to help or to hire someone to help them with building better teams, relating better to their teammates, the people that they work with, and even their personal relationships on a daily basis when generations are involved, where could they go, or what should they look for? How should they go about finding that person, and what should they look for?
Yeah, I think team building is really important. And a lot of times when you feel like you have a dysfunctional team in a practice or in a corporation, you're not always sure where the dysfunction comes from. So finding consultants that are willing to hop on a quick call with you and understand your exact needs and strategize with you are a great resource. I recommend, there's so many great dental consultants, but going to the Speaking Consulting Network and looking through their team building page that has so many different great dental consultants on there that have practice culture camps and other things that really help make the practice thrive across generationally, but even with tough team dynamics within the same generation.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you very much, and recommend the book. Go to check out the website, ryanvet.com. That's VET, ryanvet.com. Ryan, please come back on the show.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Did you know you can weigh in on today's topic on Facebook? Search The Dental Brief on Facebook or visit our website, dentalbrief.com, and just follow the link. We look forward to having you join us again on another episode of The Dental Brief.